What if I told you that right now? There is a man who can't stop thinking about you, but you are completely missing the signs. You've been taught to look for romantic declarations and clear promises, but a man's true desire speaks a different language, a silent, subtle language that most women were never taught to understand. The master psychologist Carl Jung made a powerful discovery about the male unconscious. When a man truly loves you, he enters an emotional state beyond his control, revealing everything through unrehearsed gestures that are impossible to fake. In this video, we are going to decode that secret language. This isn't about games or pickup tricks. This is the deep psychology of what happens inside a man when he is truly emotionally connected. This is the kind of profound knowledge we explore here. A huge number of you who find these truths are watching without being subscribed. If you are ready to stop guessing and start knowing, do 3 things for us now. Hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a video that could give you this clarity. And comment the single word, "understand," below to affirm your journey with us. What I am sharing with you now is not the kind of thing you find in a self-help book or a magazine conversation. It is deep knowledge based on male psychology, something that almost no one talks about openly. The philosopher Alan Watts said that the only way to understand change is to dive into it, move with it, and join the dance. And when it comes to male behavior, that's exactly it. We need to dive deep into what Jung called the unconscious. Jung believed that each person carries within them an unconscious image of their ideal partner. In men, this image is called the anima. In women, the animus. When a man finds a woman who touches this internal image, something powerful happens. He feels he has found a part of himself that was missing. And this goes far beyond physical attraction or on paper. Compatibility. It's one of those connections that touch the soul. And the most curious thing is that when this connection happens, many men can't put it into words, because no words seem sufficient. So what do? They show it with actions, with gestures, with that kind of silent behavior that speaks directly to our unconscious. Ralph Waldo Emerson said something that fits perfectly here. "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." This sentence says it all. When a man is truly in love, you don't need to hear it, you feel it. More recent studies in neuroscience are confirming what Jung suspected long ago. When a man is truly in love, his brain begins to function differently. There is a unique release of chemical substances like dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which directly affect his behavior. And all of this happens outside of conscious control. Dopamine, for example, is what gives that feeling of pleasure, of reward. When he is truly involved, his brain associates the woman's presence with this good feeling. And then, an almost addictive desire to be near her arises. He doesn't think, "I want to see her because it makes sense." He feels it. It's his body asking for it. Even with other priorities, even with a busy routine, he seeks to be close. There is no rational explanation. It is instinct. Jung developed the concept of synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences that seem connected by something invisible. And this does happen when there is a real connection. He messages you right when you are thinking about him. You discover things in common, crossing paths, unexpected affinities. It gives a sense of alignment, as if the universe were conspiring in your favor. But many women ignore these signs because they are too focused on what is blatant, on what is obvious proof of love, canned phrases, public displays, and they end up not seeing what really matters. Because true commitment reveals itself in the details, in a small gesture, in a subtle choice, in a gaze that lasts half a second longer. As Gandhi said, actions show true priorities, and this has never made more sense than when we talk about love. If you want to know what a man feels, observe what he does consistently, not just when he is feeling inspired. The big mistake many women make is confusing desire with emotional connection. Physical attraction happens in an instant. It's chemistry, it's appearance, it's impulse. But emotional involvement is born gradually. It grows with shared experiences. It strengthens with care. It shows itself in consistency. Sometimes you don't even realize it's happening, but it is. A man can feel desire for several women, But when he connects emotionally with one, his world changes. His focus shifts. He begins to see her as part of his life, his future, of who he is. This affects everything: decisions, choices, even things that seem to have nothing to do with the relationship. Albert Einstein said that the world is not dangerous because of those who do evil, but because of those who watch and do nothing. In love, it's almost the same thing. The real danger is not being loved. It's not realizing that you already are, that you are being loved in a true way, but you are looking in the wrong direction. Society has accustomed us to be suspicious, to expect the worst, to doubt, and so we put on sunglasses and begin to think the world is dark, but it's not the world. It's the lenses. Jung believed that a true encounter between two people only happens when both have the courage to lower their defenses and show who they really are. But men, they learn from a young age to hide what they feel, to appear strong, unshakable. When a man begins to share with you his insecurities, fears, dreams, and even his failures, he is doing something rare, very rare. He is lowering the shield he uses to protect himself from the world. And this doesn't always come in the form of grand confessions. Sometimes it appears in the details, when he shares a concern about work, when he tells a dream he's never told anyone, when he lets slip a part of him that is normally hidden. It's as if he's saying, without using words, "I trust you enough to show you who I really am." Nelson Mandela, a man who changed a nation through forgiveness, said something powerful. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And for a man, showing what he feels, being emotionally vulnerable, is an act of enormous courage, because it goes against everything he learned about what it is to be a man. Jung helps us understand this in a deeper way. According to him, we all carry within our minds something called the collective unconscious. A part of our psyche does not come from our personal experience, but is shared by all of humanity. It is a type of inherited memory, full of images, emotions, and patterns that cross generations. And in relationships, this translates into behaviors that we recognize, even without knowing why. Like when in the middle of a crowd, his eyes search for yours, as if you were the north and he a compass. This attraction, this magnetism, is not just desire. It's something that escapes rational control. Martin Buber, an existentialist philosopher, spoke of two types of relationships, the I-it and the I-thou. When a man looks at a woman as a thou, he is not seeing you as an object, but as someone complete, someone with depth, with a soul, with mysteries. It is the kind of looks that says, "I see all of you, and yet I want to get closer." Perhaps one of the most revealing signs of this involvement is when you catch him watching you without him knowing you've noticed. He watches you when you interact with others, when you smile, when you simply move. And this gaze is not invasive. It is a look of silent admiration, as if he were in the presence of something precious. Tolstoy said that the eyes are the mirror of the soul, but they are also a fortress. They guard the best-kept secrets. And yet, when love is true, this fortress begins to open, and the eyes reveal what the words hide. Jung also spoke of synchronicity, when things happen at the same time, without a rational explanation, but with a very clear meaning. When he is really connected with you, these synchronicities begin to emerge. He is free exactly when you are too. The schedules fit, the conversations flow, everything seems to align naturally. This is not a coincidence. It is the unconscious acting, in silence, guiding everything that the conscious mind has not yet fully understood, but deeply desires. And you know what is even more revealing? The way he occupies the physical space around you. Jung realized that when we are emotionally connected to someone, we begin to reduce, without even noticing, the physical distance between us and that person. It is as if there is an invisible force pulling, a kind of emotional gravity. A man who is truly involved will get closer, and not in a forced or uncomfortable way, but naturally. His body leans in your direction during a group conversation. His feet point towards you. He finds discreet ways to be near, as if the simple act of sharing the same space is already important. The philosopher Emmanuel Levinas said that the presence of the other places us before an inescapable responsibility. And you notice this in that almost imperceptible gesture. He turns to you even when the conversation is not just with you. The shoulders, the face, the whole body saying without words, "I am here with you." It is his body surrendering to the connection, even if he hasn't yet realized it rationally. Jung said that the body reveals truths before the mind can understand them. Sometimes the man has not yet verbalized his own feelings, but you feel it in the way he looks at you, how he positions himself, how he approaches. His body is already living the feeling before he can even name what it is. The philosopher Simone Weil said, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity." And this attention appears in physical gestures, in focus, in the way he is present there. The proximity he seeks is not just about desire, it's about wanting to share the same space, the same air, the same moment. It's almost as if he wants to experience life by your side, from your point of view. Hannah Arendt spoke of the space of appearance, this symbolic place where we show ourselves to the other through our words and actions. And a man in love seeks to create this space with you all the time, because it is in this space that he can reveal himself and also see who you truly are. Think of Pedro and Ana, for example. They are at a crowded party, each in a corner, talking to different groups. But even so, there is an invisible line connecting the two. Pedro always knows where Ana is. From time to time, his eyes search for hers, just to make sure she is still there, that the connection continues. And when she passes by, even before seeing her, he feels it. His body already reacts to her presence. There is a silent dance between the two, made of subtle approaches, gazes, almost choreographed movements. None of this is planned. It is pure instinct. It is the unconscious showing that there is something there. And then comes the fourth sign, one of the most certain that he is emotionally involved: selective memory. Jung discovered that our unconscious constantly filters the information that reaches us, and it retains only what it considers important. So, when a man is emotionally attached to you, he develops an almost photographic memory for everything that has to do with you. He remembers conversations that happened weeks ago, small details that many people would not pay attention to. He not only listened but remembered a preference of yours, a casual comment, a change in your hair, a different outfit. And most impressively, he is not trying hard to remember. His brain does it on its own because, unconsciously, you have become a priority. Marcel Proust, who studied memory deeply, wrote that facts do not create our beliefs, nor can they destroy them. But when we love, memory works differently. What has to do with the loved one gains brilliance, gains strength, it remains, resisting time. And this becomes even clearer when he mentions something to you that you yourself had forgotten you said, but he didn't, because it somehow touched something inside him. Maybe it was a dream you told in passing, a fear you shared in a more sensitive moment, or even a childhood memory that seemed random. And then, one day, he surprises you by mentioning exactly that. Not because he wanted to impress you, but because it was really stored away. It touched something inside him. Walter Benjamin said that memory is not just a tool to remember the past. It is a theater. And when a man is in love, you become the main character on this stage. Everything you say, do, or feel gains a special meaning. The moment passes, but it remains inside him, vibrating. Modern neuroscience has confirmed what Jung intuited long ago. Our brain processes everything connected to someone for whom we feel something strong differently. The amygdala and the hippocampus, two regions linked to emotional memory, become more activated. This generates more vivid memories that resist time. Want to see an example? Marcelo and Julia met in a photography course. During a class break, while talking about techniques, Julia commented, almost without realizing it, that she loved sunflowers. It was something connected to her grandmother, who raised her and grew these flowers in her yard. It was just that, a detail in the middle of the conversation. 3 months later, on Julia's birthday, Marcelo showed up with a vase with 3 sunflowers and a rare book about the history of sunflowers in art. Julia was speechless. She didn't even remember having told him that. But Marcelo remembered, because for him, everything that came from her had a special glow. This type of memory is not just for tastes or preferences. When a man is emotionally connected, he also remembers your discomforts, your pains, your vulnerabilities. If you say you are afraid of heights, he will remember that. And when he plans something, that detail will be there in his mind. If you comment that a certain topic is sensitive, he will not bring it up for no reason because he cares, not as a strategy, but as a natural response of someone who is truly involved. The writer Iris Murdoch said, "Love is the extremely difficult realization that something other than oneself is real." And perhaps that is the essence of it all. He not only observes you, he perceives you in a profound way. He sees you. Jung believed that true love has this element of recognition, as if in some way the soul already knew the other. And this appears in the way the brain registers what is yours, as if it were too valuable to be forgotten. And it's important to differentiate this from someone who collects information to use later, as if it were a game. That is not what we are talking about. The selective memory of a man in love has a different texture. It is spontaneous, natural. He doesn't remember because he wants to please you. He remembers because he cannot forget. Albert Camus said, "In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." That is what happens. When a man truly connects with a woman, he discovers parts of himself that were always there but were dormant. And one of those parts is this sensitive attention, this subtle presence, this living memory that holds everything. Jung spoke of psychic constellations. They are like internal networks that are activated when something emotionally strong happens. When love is kindled within someone, everything related to the loved one is highlighted. It is as if a spotlight turns on inside his mind, illuminating what matters. The rest stays in the shadows. And returning to what Jung deeply believed, a true encounter between two people only happens when both can take off their armor, lower their defenses, and show who they truly are, without masks, without poses. But from a very young age, men learn to hide, to appear strong all the time. How many times have you heard boys being told, "Men don't cry"? These phrases build a wall around the heart, a wall that is difficult to tear down. The researcher Brené Brown said something very powerful. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's our most accurate measure of courage. And when a man, despite having learned to hide, chooses to show what he feels, that is an act of true courage. When a man begins to share with you his insecurities, his fears, the dreams he never realized, and even the failures he carries in silence, he is doing something rare, very rare. He is lowering the armor that protects him from the world. And this doesn't have to happen in dramatic scenes, with tears or emotional speeches. Sometimes it happens in the details of everyday life, like when he mentions, a bit awkwardly, that he has a worry about work that keeps him up at night, or when he confesses a doubt he has about himself, or even mentions an old dream he never had the courage to tell anyone. Nietzsche, whom many people interpret only as someone who exalted strength, actually understood the value of vulnerability profoundly. He said that the highest spirituality is in protecting what is vulnerable. And that is exactly it. When a man shows his vulnerability, he is showing strength, a rare, silent strength, the courage to be seen as he is. Think of Raphael, an executive known for his firmness, for his self-confidence in the workplace. Always sure, always in control. But with Mariana, after a few months, he began to show another side. Subtle comments here and there, doubts about important decisions, fears of not being up to par, insecurities with social skills. They were not dramatic outpourings. They were moments of sincerity, of openness in their evening conversations, when the world grows calmer. And Mariana, who understands Jungian psychology, knew that this was a gift, a gesture of trust. He wouldn't act like that with just anyone. Showing that side was a sign that she already had a special place inside him. And then comes another deep sign: integration into social circles. Jung said that we incorporate into our identity the people with whom we have real emotional bonds. And this appears when he begins to want to include you in everything, not just in intimate moments, but in life as a whole. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke about the type of relationship he called I-thou. Unlike I-it relationships, in an I-thou relationship, the other is not seen as an object, but as someone who transforms us, and is transformed by us as well. So, when a man introduces you to his closest friends, when he talks about you to his family, when he invites you to be present at important moments, he is saying, "You are a part of me, a part of my real life." He doesn't hide you. On the contrary, he speaks with a sparkle in his eyes, with pride, as if presenting something precious. It's not about showing off, it's about sharing, because you have become a part of who he is. Jung understood that our identity is not something isolated. It is built in relationships. And when he starts introducing you to important people, it's not just for politeness. It's a way of saying, "She is part of how I recognize myself now." Albert Camus wrote, "In the midst of winter I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." And when a man is emotionally involved, he wants others to see this summer, because you awakened something in him, and it overflows. He doesn't want to keep it just for himself. Look at what happened with Cecilia. She was going out with Tiago for 2 months, but whenever she talked about social gatherings, parties, friends, he would change the subject, say he had other commitments, never made himself available to get to know her world, nor to invite her into his. Meanwhile, Helena met Bruno around the same time, and in less than a month, he was already talking about her to his parents on the phone. 6 weeks later, she was having lunch with his family on a Sunday and was introduced to his friends at a happy hour that deep down she knew had been organized just for that. There was no speech, but the actions spoke loudly. Bruno had already decided that he wanted Helena present in all parts of his life. And then comes the third deep sign, the projection of a shared future. Jung discovered that the way we perceive time changes completely when we create real emotional bonds. When a man is emotionally involved with you, he begins, almost instinctively, to include you in his plans. Even if the relationship is still in its early stages, he already sees you there in the future, and he doesn't need to say it in so many words. You feel it. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard said that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And that is exactly it. When he starts looking forward, and in that scenario you are by his side, it is because you already occupy an important space in his heart. He talks about trips he would like to take months from now, an event next year, already considering that you will be together. And it's not a demand, it's not a rush, it's natural, as if the idea of a future without you no longer even makes sense. But the most beautiful part is when he shares his own dreams, those bigger life dreams, and you realize that somehow you are already part of this project. He imagines the ideal house and talks about how nice it would be to see you there. He comments that he would like to show you the city where he grew up, and it is in these details that the truth appears. These are not empty promises. They are fragments of a heart that has already included you as part of the path. Heidegger called this Dasein, the being that projects possibilities. And when a man loves, his possibilities and yours begin to intertwine. The future is no longer just his. It becomes yours together. And this doesn't always manifest with declarations about marriage, children, or big things. Sometimes it's in the simplest comment. When that restaurant opens in the spring, we'll go. Or, when the sequel to that movie comes out, let's see it together. It's the way he talks. There is an assumption of continuity, of permanence. And there is one more point that cannot be ignored: emotional responsibility. The philosopher Levinas said that responsibility for the other is the basis of all ethics. And when a man is truly connected to you, he feels this responsibility, not as a weight, but as something that is born from the bond. Notice how he acts when you are sick. Even if it's just a cold, there is a different kind of attention. It's not just politeness, it's real care. It's him giving up commitments, changing his routine. Not to score points with you, but because his priority changed in that moment. You became the priority. Viktor Frankl said that love is the only way to grasp another human being in the innermost core of his personality. And this care he has for you comes precisely from there, because he saw something essential in you and now wants to protect it. Think about Gabriela and Matthias. They were having dinner with friends when someone made a somewhat snide comment about her work. Before she could say anything, Matthias intervened. Without being aggressive, without fighting, but with firmness. He defended her work, her ability, with the respect she deserved. Later, when Gabriella commented on the gesture, he was surprised. He hadn't even realized he reacted that way, because it wasn't thought out. It was instinctive. On another occasion, she was going through an intense phase at work, and Matthias, without saying anything, started taking care of the household chores they shared. He didn't say, "I'm helping you." He just did it, because he understood that she needed space and wanted to give that to her. These gestures were not to impress. They were the natural expression of a man who felt part of her life, a man who was already emotionally involved. Now tell me, are you allowing yourself to be treated like this? Are you putting yourself in the kind of relationship where this type of care happens naturally, or are you still accepting crumbs, trying to justify absences, and convincing yourself that you are the problem? If you want real change, if you are tired of being the only one who gives, then start with yourself. Have you already checked the link in the description? There is a gift there designed for women who have decided to value themselves, who understood that loving yourself also means seeking the kind of knowledge that liberates. Because whoever chooses to know themselves stops accepting less than they deserve. And so we arrive at one of the most revealing signs: consistency over time. Jung said that we can pretend anything for a while, but sooner or later the truth comes out. A man can simulate interest, attention, presence. He might even seem perfect for a few weeks or months, but if the feeling isn't true, the mask falls off. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Who you are speaks so loudly I can't hear what you're saying." And in the end, that's it. It doesn't matter what he says he feels. Over time, you will see who he really is. A truly involved man does not oscillate between presence and absence. He maintains the same interest, the same energy, the same attention over time. It's not that emotional roller coaster that starts intense and then disappears without explanation. He doesn't disappear for days after 2 weeks of excitement. He doesn't create cycles of hot and cold. His behavior is stable, reliable, predictable, not in the sense of being monotonous, but of being authentic, because what is true does not need effort to remain so. Jung understood this deeply. He believed that when a person confronts their shadows, those parts of themselves they avoided seeing, they become more whole. And someone who is more integrated is naturally more consistent. A man who has already walked a path of self-knowledge, even if he doesn't call it that, tends to have a firm, constant emotional presence. And this consistency doesn't just appear in grand gestures. It's in the small rituals, the good morning message that arrives. Every day without fail, the call at the end of the workday, the real interest in knowing how your day was. These small actions, repeated naturally, reveal much more than 1,000 promises said on impulse. The philosopher Hannah Arendt said that promises are the human way of giving some predictability to the future. And that is exactly it. When he acts with consistency, he is making a silent promise. He is saying, "You can count on me. My interest in you is not going to evaporate." Look at what happened with Anna and Pedro. In the beginning, Pedro was intense. He sent messages all the time, made surprises, said strong words. But Anna, who already knew the signs, waited. And over time, the pattern appeared. Moments of total attention, followed by long silences, cancelled plans, unanswered messages. When she confronted him, he always had an explanation. But the cycle continued. Intense approach and withdrawal. Meanwhile, Carla met Rodrigo around the same time, and the beginning was calm, without exaggeration. But over the months, Carla noticed something that was worth more than any explosion of feelings. Rodrigo never disappeared. His messages were constant. When he said he would call, he called. When he promised he would be present, he was. It was simple, and it was safe. And this constancy was a much more valuable kind of love than the ups and downs that Anna was living. And no, consistency does not mean losing who you are. Jung said that only a well-structured ego can be flexible without erasing itself. In other words, an emotionally mature man does not feel threatened by needing to adapt. On the contrary, he understands that true flexibility is born from inner strength. Pay attention to how he reacts when something doesn't go his way. Does he insist on having control, get irritated, become inflexible, or does he show a real willingness to find solutions together, even if he has to give something up? William James, one of the fathers of psychology, said that the greatest discovery of his generation was that human beings can change their lives by changing their attitudes. And sometimes the most important transformation happens within ourselves, because deep down, relationships are mirrors. They show parts of us that we might never see alone. When you learn to identify the difference between a superficial interest and a real involvement, you are also getting to know yourself better. You are discovering what you really need, what you value, what you deserve. Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet, said that the only true journey is the journey inward, and relationships, especially the challenging ones, especially the deep ones, are perhaps the most fertile ground for this journey to happen. They reveal our most hidden hopes, our oldest fears, our still open wounds, and also the beautiful capabilities we haven't yet had the courage to bring out. And when you start to value these behaviors that Jung identified as signs of true love, you are doing something very powerful. You are affirming your value. You are saying with actions, with choices, with courage, I deserve a love that goes beyond words, a love that is here, that sees me, that stays, even when it's not easy. Hannah Arendt wrote that love, by nature, is a world apart, a space-time of its own, and that is exactly it. When you find someone who truly demonstrates the signs of emotional involvement that Jung identified, you have the chance to enter this rare space, a place where you can be truly seen, known, and valued completely without needing to hide anything. Think about Christina. For years, she believed she had to win men's love by being perfect, always available, always understanding, never seeming difficult. She tried so hard to be accepted that there was hardly any room left to be herself. And the result? Unbalanced relationships, where she gave much more than she received, where her value seemed to depend on how much she gave, and it was never enough. It was only when she began to study the signs of true emotional involvement, those that Jung described, that it clicked. Real love is not one with performance. A man who is truly connected does not fall in love with a perfect version of you, but with something deeper, with something essential in you that touches something essential in him. This recognition changed everything for Christina. She began to relate from a place of value, not of lack. She understood that she didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to be. Jung said that every significant relationship is an opportunity for individuation, that is, to become more fully who you already are. He compared the encounter between two people to a chemical reaction. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. So, when you meet a man who demonstrates these real signs of emotional involvement, you are not just meeting a partner, you are meeting a mirror, a catalyst, someone who, without knowing it, helps you grow, heal, and evolve. Paulo Coelho, with his simplicity, wrote, "When you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. And sometimes, just recognizing these signs is already a form of manifestation. Because when your heart starts to see what previously went unnoticed, your consciousness aligns with a new pattern. And that is what begins to attract new realities. But how to apply all of this? The first step is simple but powerful. Observe, without rushing to conclusions, without needing to interpret everything immediately. Just observe. See his behavior calmly over time. Lao Tzu said, "To know when to stop and when to act brings peace." And wisdom does exactly that. It helps you know when it is worth continuing and when it is time to protect your heart. If you are already in a relationship, this look is not a test. It's not to judge. It's a new lens, a way to see more clearly what is really happening. Not what you expect, not what he says, but what actually manifests between you. Albert Einstein said that you cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. And that is what this knowledge offers. A new perspective, a new way of seeing, of understanding what was previously invisible. If you are getting to know someone now, this look becomes an internal compass. Instead of getting carried away by promises or expectations, you learn to perceive the real patterns from the beginning. The poet Mary Oliver said that attention is the beginning of devotion. And that is exactly it. Paying more attention to behaviors than to words gives you a kind of silent but powerful wisdom. Think about Renata. After a painful divorce, she was hesitant. She was afraid to open up again. When she met Marcelo, she noticed something different. He remembered the details. He was present. There was a quiet consistency in the way he treated her. He didn't promise anything grandiose, but he did everything he said he would do. Renata did not let herself be carried away by the anxiety of knowing where it would lead, nor did she fall into the pessimism of thinking it was too good to be true. She just observed, without rushing, without creating stories. And that is what created space for a real connection, not based on fantasies nor on empty declarations, but on presence, on consistency, on something that grew calmly and took root with truth. You now hold the knowledge that acts as a compass, not to control others, but to recognize what is real and to value what is genuine. This wisdom is the light that illuminates the path back to yourself, allowing you to see the unconscious patterns that have directed your life until now. As Carl Jung taught, every true relationship is a chemical reaction that transforms you, connecting you back to the woman you are becoming. To seal this new understanding and claim your power, we invite you to make a declaration. Go to the comments and write the words, "I am ready." Let this be your personal vow that you are now ready to receive the authentic love you deserve. If this message has given you a new perspective, give this video a like and share it with someone who needs this light. An incredible number of people who find these truths are watching without being subscribed. If you are ready to continue this journey of transformation, take a moment to subscribe and activate the bell so you never miss the next revelation. Remember, your task is not to seek love, but to remove the barriers within yourself. May you now be ready to receive it.